This is Straight No Chaser, the podcast where we break open identity, intimacy, and crack open ideas we live with daily but rarely question. I'm Kelvin Blunt. We've heard ourselves or others say something along the lines of, well, he slept with a man, so he's gay. End of story. She's not a lesbian. She just hasn't been with a real man. He's not bi. We all said that before we came out. And these aren't just opinions. These are social flexes, packaged and repeated like gospel. You're either this or that, as if we're experts, or that because we know our sexual orientation or identity, we assume we know the identity of others. But how many of us actually studied this stuff or read anything about any of these topics? And do we really believe that the 8 billion people in the world neatly fit into either straight, bi, or gay boxes? Those are the only choices? Bless our hearts. We assume behavior, orientation, and identity should all match. But real life rarely plays by those rules. In this episode, I'm breaking down why those differences matter and how they've been erased, policed, or misunderstood across generations. From the Kinsey scale to modern-day identity shifts, we'll explore how behavior doesn't always align with identity and why that matters more than ever. As we explored in episode 2, sexual identity labels are fewer than 160 years old. Now think about that. Human civilization is at least 6,000 years old. The first humans surfaced at least 300,000 years ago. Our first human ancestors appeared as far back as 7 million years ago. So what did we call sexual identity more than 160 years ago? Well, sexuality wasn't something that we were. It was what we did. So what's the difference between sexual behavior, sexual orientation, and sexual identity? Well, sexual behavior is just that, sexual behavior, what we do, not necessarily what we are. We've heard before the phrase, she performed a sexual act. Not that she was the sexual act. By behavior, we mean sexual feelings, thoughts, desires, acts, or gratification. For example, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher in the 2nd century, he journaled about his lust towards both male and female companions. For example, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher in the 2nd century, journaled about his lust towards both male and female companions. But he wasn't writing about a crisis of sexual identity or being sexually confused. He was simply struggling with distraction and being self-disciplined. Now, sexual orientation is to whom someone is romantically, emotionally, and sexually drawn. Not just sexually, romantically, emotionally, and sexually drawn. For example, a woman attracted to multiple genders, but in a monogamous relationship with a man. And as covered in episode 2, and I can't stress this enough, terms like heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual were coined in the late 19th century, and the term sexual orientation wasn't coined until 1931, after which we began using terms like gay, bi, straight, pansexual, questioning, and asexual. So these terms are new, and the sexual acts we've been performing are decidedly old. Sexual identity is how someone refers to themselves or calls themselves. Identity can be an internal or public label. For example, a man who has sex with men for money but identifies as straight based on how he sees himself. But I buried the lead here. These terms often do not align as they are in the minds of the beholder. Sexologists have a handle on these terms. Us, not so much. As such, it's easy for us to go down a rabbit hole and make it make sense. Bless our hearts. Alfred Kinsey's research on sexual behavior in the 1940s and 50s confirmed this dissonance. Kinsey reported that a large percentage of men, 37%, and women, 13%, reported same-sex experiences to orgasm. Now, Kinsey's research was the first of its kind, some 80 years after the terms heterosexual and homosexual were coined. Despite criticisms of his methods, Kinsey's core findings remain consistent when the contested info is removed. In a separate episode, we'll do a deeper dive on Kinsey's research. But even today, researchers like Dr. Lisa Diamond and Karen G have shown that sexual orientation is often less stable and biologically fixed than we previously assumed or were told. And clinical sexologist Dr. Joe Kort has argued that some straight-identified men who have sex with men aren't closeted or bi or confused, but navigating desire in a way that doesn't match society's narrow categories. So the takeaway is clear. Behavior doesn't always dictate identity, and that's what rattles us. We want things to match. We want things tied in a bow, to align, to fit. We want it to make sense. The words we use to describe sexuality, gay, straight, bi, queer, asexual, and pansexual, feel like timeless facts. They're not. The words we use to describe sexuality, gay, straight, bi, queer, asexual, and pansexual, feel like timeless words. They're not. They're recent inventions shaped by language, science, religion, and politics. Now, these terms weren't discovered so much as they were constructed to classify and control human behavior. And while identity can be useful, especially for social political reasons, labels are often too dumbed down for the lived reality of human sexuality. Interestingly, LGBTQ identity is more prevalent than ever. But for Gen Z, who self-identify at higher rates as LGBTQ+, they, non-binary, neurodivergent, or mixed race, they are more likely to reject rigid labels. So the kids are all right. As for the rest of us, it's long overdue that we ask ourselves and others some inconvenient questions. Why are we so desperate to define people by a single word? Why are we so desperate to define people by a single word? Why do we reduce desire and behavior to a label, then get in our feelings when people don't fit those labels? And why do some gay men demand that society respect the complexity of our sexualities, yet drag other men, i.e. gay for pay models, bi men, trans men, for not fitting into a label of our approving? And why are we so uncomfortable with the unknown? What if the unknown isn't a problem to solve, but a truth to accept? We'll explore these questions together in future episodes, including identity labels, where they came from, their benefits and limits. We again will do a deep dive into Kinsey's research. And what is gay for pay? Why is it so popular? And why is it so controversial? Until then, you can follow me on Straight No Chaser on Substack, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll see you next time. I'm Kelvin Blunt. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and ensure that others are being good to you. See ya!